There's many different ways to approach the various topics in Himalayan art, and we've talked a little bit about the Dalai Lamas and how they're represented, but sometimes I even confuse myself with these videos and some of my own write-ups, because what seems clear in my head isn't always clear to the listener or clear to me later on when I go back to something and review it. So I'm just going to touch on a few really key study topics for the subject of the Dalai Lama representations in art. There are four key topics. The first is Dalai Lamas represented in Incarnation painting and Incarnation sculpture sets. This is actually a large percentage of the art that we find, both painting and sculpture, are sets of works that are only trying to show the Dalai Lamas as we know them from the posthumously the first up until the third, who was named, given the title Dalai. It's not really a title. Dalai is a translation of the Tibetan word Gyatso into Mongolian. So it just means Dalai Lama means Gyatso Lama. It's the name of the Dalai Lama. Not necessarily a big deal. Sometimes in history they make a lot more out of this than what's really possibly there. So after the third, then we have the fourth, who had a very short life, but then the fifth is the most important, really the first posthumous Dalai Lama, and then the fifth are the two most important early Dalai Lamas. For art, I think the second and third Dalai Lamas actually play a role, but most of that material is not translated into English. So what's important here, the first key topic, are these sets of paintings and sets of sculpture that are created to show the Incarnation lineage post first Dalai Lama, but then also all the previous incarnations, which go back to Dromten, and then also go back to various Indian teachers and kings. There's a long list of these figures. Not all of them are always represented for the pre-incarnations prior to the first Dalai Lama. Okay, now the second key topic is the stages of the path lineage paintings. Stages of the path in Tibetan is the Lamrim, or the Great Lamrim, the great stages of the path, and this is one of the monumental teachings and texts written by Je Tsongkhapa, the founder of the Gelug tradition. So we find that there are a number of sets of paintings where the central figure in each composition is a single teacher, and many of these since the 15th century are Dalai Lamas. These can also be done as the stages of the path in a single composition, but we'll get to that later. So, stages of the path, the Lamrim Chemo in sets of paintings, a single teacher to a single composition, as well as sculpture sets. Now, the next topic really is single commission objects. Single commission objects, it's very difficult to identify a single commission object as being a Dalai Lama unless there's an inscription, or if it's a sculpture, and if it's it has a mustache, it has a purba peg in the belt sash, and possibly holding a wheel in the left hand in the lap, then we can identify that as the great fifth Dalai Lama, or sometimes without the purba, we might identify it as the great 13th Dalai Lama. Otherwise, with sculpture, if there's no inscription, it can be very difficult to identify without the mustache and without the purba peg. With paintings, it can be easier for single compositions or single commissions. It can be easier because we can identify possibly the Dalai Lama by context. Now, fourthly, Dalai Lamas as secondary figures. Now, this is very common, especially in the last 200 years, where we find in the top center, the top right, the top left, we will find a figure of the Dalai Lama. We can identify it either by context or by inscription. So these are the 4 key topics for understanding Dalai Lama art, Dalai Lamas depicted in Himalayan art. Incarnation painting and sculpture sets, the Stages of the Path Lamrim, Lineage painting sets, single commission objects, and then Dalai Lamas as secondary figures populating the upper right or left side of a painting, especially in the last 200 years. So press the like button. You can subscribe. You can also support the work we do on HAR on Patreon.